I am one of the software engineers who actually help develop Aggregate EU, and today I will showcase the midterm process to all of you. To start, what is midterm tendering? This is now for buyers and sellers looking for long-term partnerships. The tender duration has been increased to 6 months, and we are now collecting demands for up to 5 years. And especially important for a lot of the buyers, this is anonymous and individual tendering. So your demand will be presented to potential sellers, but your company will stay anonymous until you as a buyer then chose to approach the sellers that have expressed their interest. To get you started, registration for Aggregate EU is a very simple 3-step process that starts with registering on the PRISMA platform itself. To do so, there is a very simple registration form. You just have to fill this out, confirm your data and email address later on, and then the PRISMA customer success team will review the information you have provided and either approve your registration request directly or contact you to clarify any further questions. Then, for participation in Aggregate EU, you have to provide a declaration of honor. This needs to be submitted in order to participate, and you can find the template for this in our knowledge base. You then need to fill this out and sign it with a qualified electronic signature. And then keep it at hand because you will need it in the last step we're getting to, which is the subscription step. Here you log in with your newly created PRISMA account. We'll go to the Aggregate EU section, can configure all the roles you need to participate in, so buyer, seller, or even both, and then also upload your declaration of honor there. Submit this, and again, the customer success team at PRISMA will review your application and either approve it or contact you for further questions. Now, where to find that template for the declaration of honor and all the information I talked about. In case you need support, I can point you to our knowledge base that is available at help.prisma-capacity.eu. And on there, you will find this nice Aggregate EU hub with articles describing basically everything I've just told you and everything I'm also going to tell you in the next few minutes. In case those articles are not enough, you can always contact the customer success team directly, either via email or phone. And with that, and an active Aggregate EU subscription, you will then be able to participate in the midterm tenders. And how that will look, I'm going to walk you through this now. Again, we will start with the demand submission phase here on the platform. And in this case, we are subscribed as a buyer. And you will again be, as a buyer, able to submit demand for LNG at our 2 virtual points and for the usual pipeline gas at national balancing points. As you can see, with this midterm tender, we have now made a few small changes to this overview step. You can see that the tender cards for the LNG and the NBP tender now clearly state midterm in the second text line. This indicates that this is a midterm tender, opposed to the short-term tenders that will now be marked as short-term. And what does midterm mean? Again, you see the demand runtime is now expressed as summer 2024 until winter 2029, which is the 5-year period expressed in 6-month intervals identified as summer and winter. And how this looks now, if you go into the demand section, we can see that there are already 2 demands prepared here for us. And on the My Demands page here, you can see that the cards have been reorganized a little bit. You still see the name and all your demands, but the duration now also states summer to winter, where summer always is a period starting on the 1st of April, going until the 30th of September. And winter is the period going from 1st of October to the 31st of March of the year. And thus you also see the demand graphs changed a bit, now showing larger amounts and the 5 years of summer and winter periods that you can submit your demand for and manage your demand here. You can then create a new demand if you want to, just by pressing the New Demand button. So on this demand submission form, that might look very familiar to those of you who have participated in the short-term tenders before. You must at first select whether you want to submit LNG or NBP demand. If you are using the central buyer functionality, you can select who you are acting as. In this case, we are going to skip this and just submit the demand for ourselves. However, if you are interested in acting as a central buyer, the knowledge base has all the information you need there. And finally, you can select the location in which you want to submit demand for. That must be a location you haven't submitted demand for before in this tendering round. If you have already submitted a demand for that, please instead go to the My Demand screen and use the edit functionality there, because you cannot submit a second demand for the same location. With those configured, you can basically already see the list of periods where you can submit demand for. Again, there is a small tooltip to remind you if you have forgotten which summer period and winter periods are, which month are included in there. And there you can now also just enter your demand for the available periods. Something new, the minimum demands have been increased for the midterm tenders. It is now 1.8 terawatts for LNG per period, and for NBP it's 30 gigawatt hours. And for LNG procurement, as you can see here, you could again select preferred terminals. However, this is only for your internal documentation purposes, and in the case of midterm tenders will not be shared with the sellers. And as you can also see, you can just remove periods if you don't want to submit any demand for this. And with that, you can submit your demand after accepting the terms and conditions, and afterwards will be redirected to the My Demand screen again, where you can see your newly placed demand with the demand curve you have submitted. So, and as long as the demand submission window is open, you can place as many demands as you like, edit your demands, and also completely withdraw your demands again, just by clicking on the withdraw button and then confirming that you indeed want to do this. And then the demand is just gone. To show you how it looks for editing demand and how working with demand at national balancing points looks like, we will edit the demand here. And there you see it's basically the same form, just without the preferred terminal selection, and you can make all the changes you want. Change a few data, remove a few periods, add others again, and then submit your demand. And that is the demand collection phase for the buyer. As usual, this will be running for a few days, so you have time to submit your demand. And all the information on how to place a demand, edit and withdraw it can also be found by either rewatching this recording later or going into the knowledge base. There is a demand collection section that will explain in general how this works for short-term and midterm tenders, but also go on into the specialities of the midterm tenders. After that phase, as you might already know, we get into the information sheet review phase. This lets you, for a final time, review the demands that you placed before they go into tendering. And on those information sheets, you see for each period and each location, the submitted demand. The difference to previous short-term rounds, there is now no aggregation happening with the other buyers. Thus, the field maximum total demand is no longer included, and you only see your demand, as it will also be tendered alone and with the amounts and location and time that you can see here. For better overview, you can filter this list with the available filters, so process type, location, and runtime. There you can just select the location you want, press on the filter button, and get the filtered list in chronological order for a nice overview. If you want to, you can at that point still decline participation for individual information sheets. To do so, you can just press Decline Information Sheet. However, this is an irreversible decision. You cannot take that back, and it will alter the demand profile that you placed in the previous step, removing this period from the later tendering. So please be careful with this if you really want to do this, but if you mistyped or have any other issues with the demand you placed, this is the last point to back out before the tendering phase. This also concludes the information sheet review phase and also the active participation part for the buyers. This information again can be found in the knowledge base if you want to have a look at that again. It's called demand review section there, and you will find all the information that you need. And now we go into the part where we are subscribed as a seller. And in this tendering phase, you see also a few noticeable changes for our midterm tenders. Scrolling through that here, you see demands are not aggregated anymore. Thus, there is now one tender card for one buyer at one location and a period. This means there will be more tendering cards, and you see this buyer identity field being highlighted here. As said before, for the sellers, the identity of the buyers is kept as a secret. But to still allow you to see the whole demand profile of such a buyer, you can see this randomly generated pseudonym, which will, during one tender, identify always the same buyer. So you know that if the buyer identity is the same, the buying company is the same, but you don't know which one it is. And this allows you as a seller to inspect a demand profile of a specific yet unknown to you buyer, thus protecting their identity, not revealing their specific demand to the market, but still allowing the participation for this long term without aggregation. You can filter for this buyer identity in order to get a better look at the offers. Then you will see the period shown and submitted by the buyer beforehand. You can also filter by location if needed. Once you have found a demand profile, you can express your interest to that. Difference to short-term here is you do not, as a seller, have to indicate quantity or price. You only express your interest. All negotiations about amounts and price are then happening outside of the platform, and Aggregate EU does not even provide hints about price or quantity. While the tender is running, as you just saw, you can also withdraw interest again if this is needed and also re-express them. If you want to process the tenders with your custom tools, it is also possible because we offer an Excel file download. The Excel file will always return the filtered view that you also get here. So if you want to download all the tenders available at a phase, you first have to start by removing all the filters. And once that is done, you can then download the Excel file. We will now show this Excel file to you once. And in the end, it is all the information you also get on the card, but in a nicely machine-readable format, providing you better sorting and filtering options for evaluating where you want to express your interests. This also concludes the tendering phase. Once the tendering phase is done, you can no longer express your interests, and then the matching starts. Afterwards, the matching results will then get published. And for you as a seller, this is now also very different for midterm products, because if you are subscribed as a seller and the process is done, you will see that there are no open processes. And going into the matching section, you will see this info box, because as a seller, you do not get to see any of the matches, because that would de-anonymize the buyers, which is not something that we want. So for now, you do not get to see any of those information as a seller. Instead, you will be contacted directly by the buyers if your expressed interest is attractive for them. We are now subscribed as a buyer, as you can see. And there in the My Matches section, it looks a bit different now. You will now see a few new columns, namely the product type, which now specifies whether your match is for a midterm or a short-term product. And your share of gas and average price are empty if your product type is midterm, because buyers did not provide any pricing or amount indication. You can also filter by this new product type to make managing the interest that was expressed on your offer, on your demands easier. Going into a details page, you will then see all the contact details of the sellers that have expressed their interest. In this case, seeing your tender details also again with the preferred terminals that you submitted there, and getting the contact information of the potential seller with their company name, address, and a contact person. If you have multiple people who expressed interest, then you will of course see multiple here seen with 2 of them. As you see also, in difference to the short-term matching, there is no price and amount quantities shown here either. As you can see now, there might be quite a few matches if a lot of sellers express interest, and here again we offer an Excel file to ease the processing on your side. You can just download that, open it, and we'll see that every single interest that was expressed in here is shown. So you will really get all the information out of there and can have a look at which seller expressed interest where, and really filter out the best possible partners for you and then approach them. So you will get their whole contact information in this Excel sheet. We are actually done. This is the whole matching process that usually runs over a longer period of time, now condensed into a few minutes. I hope it gave you a nice overview of what this will look like. And to summarize it again and highlight the differences of the short-term tendering and mid-term tendering, the tendering runtime was increased to 6 months. The minimum amounts also increased 6-fold, so now to 1.8 terawatt hours for LNG and 30 gigawatt hours for NBP demand. Instead of aggregation by month and location, the individual demands are now published anonymously, and the sellers don't answer with an amount and a price anymore, but just express their interest. And matching changes from the pro rata matching, you might know from the short term, to now just delivering a list of interested sellers to the buyers, so that as a buyer, you can now contact interesting seller companies. And with that, the showcase part of this webinar is done, and I am available for any questions you might have regarding the technical aspects.
Thank you, Ole, for this demonstration and all the explanation you already did. I hope you're up for more. Could you state again, what is the new minimum demand for midterm tenders and how does that compare to the short-term tender?
I can again, and it is for 6 months now, 6 times the minimum demand, so 1.8 terawatt hours if you are submitting demand at our virtual LNG points, or 30 gigawatt hours if you are submitting demand at one of the national balancing points.
Thank you. And the second question we got is, why is aggregated demand not any longer shown?
Well, because we are no longer aggregating demand between different buyers, so thus your individual demand stands on its own and no aggregation is performed.
And we go on with question number 3. Is there any limit to the number of sellers who can hit a bid for negotiation?
No. As many sellers can express their interest as they want. So if you have a very interesting demand profile, you might get dozens or more expressed interest. There is no technical limit here.
That was quite clear. No. Next question. Why did we not see a price on the tender offer details?
Because again, no price or amount information are transmitted during the midterm tendering. It is purely an expression of interest, and price and amounts are then discussed bilaterally between buyers and sellers.
And the next one, can you tell us which NBP are available?
It is the same list that was also available for the short term, which are basically the virtual trading points of all the European countries, but you can find explicit list in the knowledge base.
If I already registered for short term, do I need to register again and do a new honor declaration?
No, sorry for not pointing that out. If you have already participated in the short-term tendering, you can, without any changes, without any action on your part, directly participate in the midterm tendering.
And there's a new post. What about financial guarantee in case of matching?
Well, this is again something that is left for bilateral discussion. With the short-term information, short-term tendering, we shared those information between the buyers and sellers. However, here, as also no price indication was performed, we decided to, for now, not share any of the financial guarantees, because in certain cases, it might also reveal buyers if you know the market and know what financial capabilities they have, and we didn't want to risk that.
Thank you for the explanation. So we have still, I'd say, 1 or 2 minutes left if you have more questions about the process on the platform. So if something's coming up in your mind, something you want to know to participate in this new midterm tender process, just type it into the Q&A section. And there is a new post. Great. Do sellers have to indicate a price when expressing interest in midterm sessions?
No, there is no expression of either price or amount you can deliver. This is up for bilateral negotiations.